In this video, I'm going to walk you through a 10-step process to creating a visually impactful brand. We all know brands that are recognizable in a heartbeat. We know who they are, we know what they do, we know who they serve, and most importantly, we know what they stand for. So having that kind of clarity is called having a brand ecosystem. And a brand ecosystem is made up of touch points. So examples of touch points would be your logo, website, business cards, flyers, ads, anything that you create and distribute and have some level of creative control over. So having good continuity between these brand touch points will make your brand more recognizable. And if your brand is more recognizable, it's more memorable. We need to know which touch points are valuable to you. And then we need to create a prioritized plan to create those touch points. So before we go any further, I want to let you know that all the process that we talk about here are available on my website, brycetufts.com, under the resources tab. You can download these for free. We've got workbooks, worksheets, guides, anything to kind of help you along this process. And if something's not there, please leave a comment letting me know what you'd like to see. So the first step in this process is called discovery. What discovery is asking yourself a series of strategic and focused questions to help you understand why it is you're rebranding, who you're branding for, who your audience is, and to try to give you a list of those touch points which are going to be valuable to you. So the second part of this is messaging. And messaging is going to help us determine how we sound and how we're going to interact with our audience. So this is going to include your name, tagline, catchphrases, any vocabulary that we're going to use moving forward in this process, so we can make sure that our voice and our tone is consistent. Another reason why messaging is important is it's going to help us define what we should look like visually and kind of give some words to those visuals so that we're not just blindly creating. Next up is your brand look. In a perfect world, we should have this look figured out before we start designing any of your brand's touch points. A lot of organizations make the mistake of starting their visual identity with their logo. The problem with that is your logo is only one small fraction of what the visual identity of your brand is going to be. So how do we establish this look? Well, there's a couple methods. The first one that I would recommend is using a stylescape. So a stylescape is a group of carefully chosen references that are going to try to give us a vision of what your brand is before we actually put pen to paper. So what we're going to do in this process is we're going to be grabbing materials, we're going to be grabbing icons, fonts, pictures of people, colors. We're going to be grouping all together in this kind of designed stylescape, which shows what your brand is going to look like in the future before we even start designing. Its purpose is really to give us a vision of what can be in the future. So the second method that I would recommend, if you don't have the time or resources to create a stylescape, would just be a mood board. My recommendation with a mood board is to go into a site like Pinterest, search terms like business cards, web design, flyer designs, ad designs, and pull ones that you feel are relevant to your brand in some way. Write out notes about which of the parts of this one you feel like might work for your brand and keep those in a folder so you can reference them in the future when you need ideas. Visuals can be very hard to communicate when you're developing them. It's hard to explain to someone what you want it to look like when you're not trained in that. So the purpose of these is to give you that vocabulary through references. Number 4 in this process is probably the first reason you started searching videos like this. Your logo. The logo is really the face of your company. It has to communicate your values in a fast, recognizable, and versatile way. But we can break them down to 3 things that they must accomplish. The first is differentiating you from your competition. Second, it must represent your values and it has to do so quickly. And third, it has to be usable in all the touch points that you need it for. A logo with a lot of effects on it might look really cool, but I guarantee you it's going to be tough trying to print that on a t-shirt. If we follow the last step in our plan, designing this logo really shouldn't be that difficult because we're already going to know what our brand looks and feels like. Fifth is your font, and this one is overlooked an awful lot. Your font is one of the most crucial parts in creating consistent brand identity. How you present the message that you're trying to communicate is just as important as what that message is. So fonts also really deserve a study on their own. But if you choose a font that you feel represents your values accurately, you've probably made the right choice. So if you're just starting, I would recommend choosing one font and mastering it. But if you feel confident in your ability, more fonts are just going to give you more room to be creative in the future. We'll be going more deeply into font selection in a future video, so please subscribe for that. Number 6 is color. Now, color affects us deeply psychologically, and the colors we choose are going to communicate a lot about our brand. Color also makes up the majority of what makes your brand consistent and recognizable in the future, so it's a really important thing to get right. When choosing a color palette, you're going to want to take into consideration what your audience is going to feel when interacting with you and what mediums they're going to be viewing you through. We'll also be going more deep into color selection in a future video, so please stay tuned for that as well. So 7th is the brand kit, and at this point we're going to work out of those foundational elements that we've been talking about and into the individual pieces that are going to represent the touch points of your brand. Now a brand kit consists of your most vital branded materials, the things that you use the most often and the things that you want to inspire future designs with. This includes things like patterns, textures, logo animations, photography, your basic business cards, letterheads, things that we're going to be pulling from now and using to scale later. We've already selected that look, but this is going to allow us to exceed the creative boundaries that we've put ourselves in and really explore what it is that's going to make our brand special visually. Number 8 is the website. Now this doesn't apply to every brand, but it certainly applies to most. Now I keep the website separate from the brand kit just because it can be such an intense and sometimes complicated process. A website can be one of the most important and engaging touch points for your audience, so make sure that you're allocating your resources accordingly. Number 9, branded content. Now this covers an absurdly wide number of projects. Anything from videos, ads, social media posts, blog templates, landing pages, photography, billboards, anything that is sharing your brand to scale. What I would recommend in this process is to identify all of the brand touch points that you're going to need over the next several months and taking the time now to develop them. Keep in mind that the elements that you're putting together now are probably going to be inspiring the next several years of projects that you're taking on. So keep a close eye on this process and make sure that what you're developing reflects the values that we discussed earlier on. And lastly, number 10, the brand standards guide. Now, chances are it's been several weeks, months, or even years since you've started this process. At this point, you should start to feel like the brand is coming together and you've really come in tune with the visual identity that you're trying to create. Now, brand guides can take many shapes and forms. You can have a single sheet brand guide, you can have a book brand guide, you can have a digital brand guide, you can have a print brand guide. It's going to depend on your brand and the type of culture that you're trying to create. If your brand honestly isn't that complicated, you just need a single sheet. Make sure that it has the colors, fonts, and final logo that you decided on so that people have some idea on where to start with. If your brand is vast and covers many different touch points at a large scale, you might need a book and you might want to print it out and distribute it physically. It all depends on your brand, your organization, your team, and collectively what their understanding of the brand is. However, if you have a very complicated and detailed vision, it's best to get that in writing so it's not lost along the way. And that's it. That is the 10-step process that I use in order to create visually impactful brands. If you have any questions about the branding process, please leave them as a comment below. I'm looking for ideas for new videos. This is actually the first video in a series. If you would like to follow that process, please subscribe to the channel and watch through those videos. I'll be giving out free resources and workbooks so that you can follow along and hopefully by the end have a visually impactful brand of your own. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.